Ravi returned the next morning, suitcase in one hand, flowers in the other. He kissed my cheek, not my lips, and I pretended not to notice. Maybe he did the same. Over breakfast, he chatted about a new client and a misfired email that nearly cost them a deal. I nodded, laughed in the right places. My eyes flicked once to Arjun, who sat silently across the table, sipping his tea. He didn't look at me. The days that followed passed in uneasy rhythm. Ravi, back in his usual routine. Arjun, quieter than before, even in his garden. And me, caught between two versions of myself. The wife who smiled and served coffee, and the woman who had waited by the door for someone who wasn't her husband. I avoided being alone with Arjun. We hadn't spoken since that night. But silence, I was learning, can be louder than confession. One evening, as Ravi took a call, in the hallway, I found Arjun in the study. He was reaching for a book, but his hand paused midair when he saw me. The room, filled with dust and old wood, felt suddenly too intimate. "I won't say anything," I said softly. "You don't need to worry." He lowered his hand slowly. "That's not what I'm worried about." I waited, heart thudding. He didn't elaborate, just nodded once and left. That night, I lay awake beside Ravi, the warmth of his body just inches away, and yet I had never felt colder. I closed my eyes and remembered the stillness of that other night, the quiet connection, the feeling of being seen, even if just for a moment. I wanted to forget it. I needed to. But memory is a stubborn thing. It doesn't fade just because you tell it to. The next morning, a folded slip of paper lay tucked beneath my jewelry box. I knew the handwriting before I opened it. What happened wasn't right, but it happened. I don't ask for forgiveness, only your silence. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, the paper trembling between my fingers. I could have torn it up. I could have told Ravi. I could have screamed or cried or begged the universe for some kind of clarity. Instead, I lit a match and watched the flames swallow the words. Later that day, Neha called. "You sound different," she said. "Not better, just distant." "I'm fine," I replied, the lie practiced and clean. "You sure?" I hesitated. "No, but I will be." In the evening, I set the dinner table. Ravi poured wine. Arjun joined us a moment later, his expression unreadable. We talked about the weather, the power cuts, the price of tomatoes, mundane things, safe things. When Ravi stepped away to take a call, Arjun passed me the salt. Our fingers brushed. We both flinched. I didn't look up. Neither did he. That night, as I stood in front of the mirror removing my earrings, I caught my own eyes and held them. Who was I now? A woman who had not crossed a line, but had stood at its edge too long. A woman who shared a bed out of circumstance, but stayed awake for reasons that had nothing to do with heat. Ravi came in, yawning, unbuttoning his shirt. "Long day," he muttered. I nodded. He kissed my shoulder. I let him. And for the first time in days, I spoke the truth, to myself, if not to him. Some betrayals don't come with noise. They arrive quietly, cloaked in kindness. A conversation here, a touch there, a pause that lingers longer than it should. It wasn't love. It wasn't lust. It was something in between. An ache that found its answer in the wrong person at the right time. I climbed into bed, pulling the covers over my guilt. Ravi turned off the light. The darkness, for once, felt honest. No one talks about loneliness inside a marriage. It's not loud. It doesn't scream or slam doors. It just settles like dust on glass. My name is Maya. I've been married to Ravi for 2 years. He's a kind man, decent, driven, disciplined. But lately he feels more like a schedule than a husband. Up at 6, gym at 7, meetings by 9, asleep before I can say goodnight. I stopped counting the times he kissed my forehead instead of my lips. We live in his family's ancestral home, a wide house with quiet walls. His father, Arjun, lives with us. Retired, quiet, mostly keeps to himself. He spends most of his time in the garden, trimming hedges or reading old newspapers. We exchange polite greetings at breakfast. Nothing more. The first year of marriage I tried. I cooked, redecorated, left little notes for Ravi in his laptop bag. But notes don't matter when they're read 2 days later. I told myself it was just a phase. But phases don't feel this permanent. One evening, I sat alone on the terrace, watching the moon hang like a suspended sigh. I texted Neha, my closest friend since college. "Do you ever feel invisible?" She replied instantly. "All the time. But in my case, it's a blessing." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. That night, our anniversary passed like any other Thursday. Ravi called around 11 p.m., voice hollow with exhaustion. "Sorry, there was a delay at the plant," he said. "Rain knocked out one of the systems." I mumbled something forgiving. It felt easier than being angry. I came down to the living room and found Arjun folding the newspaper. He glanced up, gave a small nod. There was something about his eyes that night, like they had already guessed the disappointment I didn't speak of. We didn't talk. He returned to his room. I returned to mine. The heat was relentless. Our city had been roasting for days, and tonight was no different. I turned the ceiling fan on high and lay back, listening to it struggle against the air. 15 minutes later, a soft knock at the door. Arjun stood outside, holding a glass of water, his face creased with discomfort. "I'm sorry," he said. "The AC in my room stopped working. It's like a furnace in there." I hesitated. "Should I call the electrician tomorrow?" "Yes, please. He shifted, looking past me. "Do you mind if I rest here for a while? Just until it cools down a bit." I nodded. It seemed harmless. The bed was big, and he was Ravi's father. He placed the glass on the nightstand and lay on the far edge, back turned. I stayed still, clutching the edge of my own side like it might save me. Silence thickened between us. Not awkward, but not quite comfortable either. Only the fan's uneven hum filled the room. I stared at the ceiling, mind drifting to all the conversations I'd never had with Ravi. All the silences we used as substitutes. I thought of the time I bought a silk dress, just for him, and he'd glanced up from his laptop and said, "Nice. We need milk, by the way." I sighed, quietly. Arjun must have heard. "You okay?" he asked, voice low. I didn't respond right away. "Just tired," I said eventually. He paused. "You're not sleeping well these days." I turned my head slightly, surprised. "You noticed?" Hard not to. This house echoes. That line landed heavier than it should have. We lapsed into quiet again. But the silence now had an edge, like a string stretched too tight. I watched the shadow of the fan blades rotating on the wall. I wondered how long he'd stay, if Ravi would ever notice the loneliness that kept creeping into my bones. As I drifted toward sleep, I told myself it didn't mean anything. 2 people sharing a space out of necessity, but something about the air had shifted. And though we hadn't touched, hadn't crossed any line, something unspoken had stepped into the room. Morning came without a word. By the time I opened my eyes, the bed beside me was empty. The sheet on his side was barely creased. as if he hadn't allowed himself to fully rest there. I sat up slowly, feeling the weight of silence press on my chest. The fan still groaned overhead, casting slow-moving shadows along the floor. I didn't mention it to him when I passed him at breakfast. He didn't either. Ravi had texted me a dry, "Morning, meeting till 4. I replied with a thumbs-up emoji I didn't mean. The hours stretched. I read half a novel without absorbing a word. At lunch, Arjun said, "The electrician is coming. By 4. I'll handle it." I nodded, grateful for the distance. But that night, the repairman canceled. Another power surge somewhere in the city. "It'll be tomorrow now," Arjun said. He didn't look at me when he said it. I felt my pulse tighten. "You can sleep here again, if you need." His eyes met mine then, just for a second. The air in the room that night was heavier than before. The fan struggled louder. I lay, on my side, my back to him. We didn't speak. But the silence wasn't clean this time. It carried everything we'd chosen not to say. I felt the mattress dip slightly when he shifted. His breathing was steady, a little slower than mine. I closed my eyes, but my body remained alert. A few minutes passed. Then a sound, a sigh, cut through the quiet. "You ever wonder," he said, voice barely above a whisper, "what it would be like to feel seen again?" I turned my head toward him. "Seen?" "Yes," he replied. "Not watched, not acknowledged, but recognized for who you are." The words struck something soft in me. "I think I've forgotten what that feels like," I murmured. He didn't respond, but something hung in the air between us, like a door that hadn't fully shut. Our hands rested between us, not touching, not seeking, until they did. A slow, accidental brush of fingers. Neither of us pulled away. My breath caught, but I didn't move. He didn't either. I told myself it was nothing, skin grazing skin, but it felt like an answer to a question I hadn't dared to ask. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice rough. "I shouldn't." "It's okay," I said too quickly. That was the real beginning. We didn't kiss that night. We didn't speak again, but the room knew. The air changed. Our distance became measured, calculated. I stayed still for hours, afraid any motion might turn thought into action. When I finally slept, I dreamt of warmth. Not passion, but comfort. The kind that fills spaces left hollow for too long. The next morning, I lingered in bed after he left. I stared at the ceiling, wondering where the boundary had gone, and why it felt so easy to cross something I once thought unthinkable. I avoided him all day, not out of anger, but fear. Fear of what I might find in his eyes. Fear of what I might not. By evening, Ravi called. "Heading home early tomorrow," he said. "Thought we could go out, maybe catch dinner." I said yes. My voice didn't shake, but something inside me did. That night, the AC was fixed. Arjun wouldn't need to return. Still, as I climbed into bed, I found myself watching the door, listening for footsteps that never came. I told myself this was better, clean, right. But the sheet still carried a scent that wasn't mine.